chapter 21, and we say, it says in the verse, Kviyah tachat kviyah, burn in place of a burn, or petza tachas patza, a wound for a wound, a chabura tachas chabura, a bruise for a bruise. What does this mean? So let's see how Rashi tells us these words mean. What does Rashi say these words mean? Kviyah tachas kviyah, michvat eish, a burn by fire. Hold on, let me make Rabbi Yosef the co-host. This is a burn by fire. Up until this point, the Torah was talking about injuries that cause depreciation. And how do we know depreciation? In your value to do work. So, but now we're talking about damages that are not in depreciation of your ability to work, but in causing you pain. How do you measure pain? How do you measure damages for pain? So, let's say they put a hot spit on your fingernail. That's just going to cause immense pain, but it's not going to limit your ability to do your job. Although maybe today it is, because today our jobs are email, and so you can do, might impact your ability to type. But in those days, so how do you determine the damages for pain? You go like this, very simple. You put it up on Craigslist and you say, I'm looking for somebody who'll be willing to take hot iron on their fingernail. Will anybody do this for $10? And somebody says, no, $20, till you get somebody who's willing to do it for a price. And that's how you know the damages that this person's entitled to. Wow. A wound for a wound, petza. What kind of wound is this? This is himaka motzi adam. This is a wound that brings forth blood. Shepatzat b'saro. He made blood in the victim. In French, it's called navror. A wound in modern French. In French, the modern navré means to wound. Did I get that right? Anybody speak French here? We don't know. On YouTube, somebody could correct me. Well, it's okay. We'll get her next time she comes in. Everything is according to the circumstance. If there's depreciation, no saying nezek, he has to give damages. Let's say he can't work. No tain sheves, you give him lost wages. These are the 5 ways. Nezek, tsar, ripoy, sheves, boshes. Damages, pain, medicinal help, embarrassment, humiliation, he's compensated for, and nezek tsar and medicine, nezek tsar, ripoy, sheves, boshes, and humiliation. This verse is seemingly superfluous. And in the parak of the Talmud that's called Hachovel, which is the 8th chapter of Baba Kama, Darshu Rabboseinu Chayav Atzar Afil B'Makom Nezek. The rabbi said, even though there are damages, you still have to pay pain. Even though you give him the value of his hand, so let's say he chopped off his hand, you have to pay him. Let's say now he can't do his job, so let's say he's lost 50% of his worth. He still has to pay pain. Omar, Hoil the Kana Yado, and you say that since he acquired the victim's hand by paying for it, you might have said, well, since he acquired this hand by paying full damages, let's say the damage of the hand is, let's say, $1 million, you might have thought, well, now I could cut off whatever I want, and I'm exempt from pain. No, you could have cut it off with some sort of medicine that there was no pain. So we say, so you paid for damages plus pain, plus lost wages, plus medicine. There's a lot of money you have to pay. And believe me, the guy deserves it. Okay. Chabura tachas chabura. A bruise for a bruise, meaning to say the guy who's going through that pain, he can't even eat with his hand anymore. He's entitled to get all that money. A wound for a wound. What does it mean? This is a type of wound in which the blood coagulates. It doesn't escape. What's the best way to get it? In French, it's tache, colored spot. Yeah. Ukamo ve namar chabur buratav, our leopard with its spots. Vitirgamo. Oh, by the way, I want to say tomorrow afternoon we can't do this study group because I'm going to be going with David to University of Maryland. So I mean, you could contact Rabbi Yosef if you want to do it, but I can't do it. Okay. Anyway, back on to the next verse. Verse 26. If a person will strike the eye of his slave or the eye of his maidservant and destroy the eye, so he set him free. So again, can't think of anything more despicable than human slavery. I'm not here to justify it or apologize for it, but the fact that the Torah has it is something that I'll spend every single day for the rest of my life trying to figure out, because I can't. Maybe David has insight for us. But the one thing is clear, even though there is a slave, which is a real slave, a full slave, a Canaanite slave, the Torah does say that if you knock out the slave's eye, the slave goes free. And so that is in essence recognizing his humanity. Well, I don't believe, I don't know, what was the American law about that? If you knocked out your slave's eye, there was no law. You did whatever you want with him as human beings. Yeah. So with this, the Torah is saying that even though he's your slave, at least the Torah is saying that if you knock out his eye, he goes free. So this is called the shein v'ayin, the tooth in the eye. We'll see the tooth in the next verse, but first we'll read this Rashi. Et ein avdo, this refers to the Kenani. This refers to the Canaanite slave. What about the Hebrew slave if you knock out his eye? The Hebrew slave is not a slave. The Hebrew slave is just a man with a long-term contract, a 6-year contract. And such a person, if you knock out his eye, he gets damages. He doesn't go free. The Hebrew slave, he gets damages if you knock out his eye. He doesn't go free. It's a contract. And so now we see it's not just the eye which you set free. The Canaanite slave goes free in return for 24 limbs. If you knock out 24 parts of the Canaanite slave's body, he goes free. What are these 24 parts? What?
Where's the 24?
I'm reading the Rashi. That's based on the Talmud. The Talmud says. What?
Any one of the 24 parts?
Any one of the 24 parts. So what are the 24? What? Well, the 24 parts are etzbaos, hayadayim v'raglayim. That takes out 20 right there. The fingers of the hands and the feet.
20.
That's 20. Ushtei oznaim, the 2 ears, v'achotem, the nose, v'rosh hagvia, and the male member, shu girama. So you have the tooth, the eye, and 24 limbs. The 24 limbs are the 20 digits, plus the 2 ears, the nose, and the male member. So, and plus the tooth and the eye. So it's real 26. This teaches us that if the master is basically not treating, I mean, he acts recklessly, then the slave goes free. So why does it say tooth and eye? If it said the eye and not the tooth, just like the eye was something that was created with him at birth, anything that was created with him. But the tooth was not created with him. And if it says this tooth, it says the tooth and not the eye, even he knocks out a baby tooth. I might have said that it's also the case if he knocks out a baby tooth. Therefore, it states an eye. It has to be something that's an organ that's meant to last. But you knock out the baby tooth, he stays. Okay, so that's the law. No real way for me to understand how the Torah could allow slavery. It's something that we keep coming back to. Himshain Abdo Ushain.
I don't think the Torah was allowing slavery. I think the Torah was commenting on existing institution.
Yeah, but it could have said you can't have the slavery.
Could
what?
It could have, but it rejected the Torah. So
right, so it had to make it had to do what's basic basically it had to get
It's
the
an
best deal it could. But
It's an accommodation by providing some rules.
right, to make it better.
Rules to make it better.
Yeah, but it's a little bit,
Well, in a modern sense, it's terrible, but in an ancient sense, that's where slavery was everywhere.
Yes.
yeah, so that's fair, but the only problem with that is if you think the Torah is from God, you would say like the Torah needs to be taking us to another level, and here it's just getting the best deal it could.
The
Well-
Torah has to respect the people, otherwise it wouldn't be accepted.
Right, nobody would have accepted it. If the Torah would have just been too far ahead of everybody, then nobody would have accepted everything. And the Talmud has some slavery. The Talmud does have some slavery, and there also seems to be Jews having slaves up until the modern period. Even in before the Civil War, there were Jews who were slave owners, and there were rabbis who were justifying it.
Yep.
There were rabbis who were justifying it. This is.
Jews that fought for the Confederacy.
Yeah, there are. This is not our finest moment. So there were Jews who were obviously against it too.
But they found diaries of slaves in Europe who said that they used to have fist fights in the market to be bought by a Jew instead of by a goy.
Yeah, but first of all, why don't we see you today, Rabbi Yosef?
Because my background is
Shvach. Okay, fine. Okay. No, but the point is that, yeah, but isn't that a little bit of apologetics to say that the Jew is the best slave owner? I mean, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that. But I understand what you're saying, that they would be better. But look, at the end of the day, it's very hard to judge people on our value system from hundreds of years ago. Like, who knows what we're doing today, which hundreds of years from now they're going to be abhorred by. Like George Washington, everybody says a great guy. He took the teeth out when he needed another tooth. He took the tooth out of his slave's mouth and took it for himself. I mean, so this is not.
Then he violated the biblical requirement.
Right. He literally violated the biblical requirement. George Washington literally violated. Very good, Steve, sharp as ever. He literally violated that.
But at least he didn't do Baal Tashrit, right? Because he was not bar mitzvah when he cut down a cherry tree.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very difficult how we could do that. I cut you off, Steve. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that one of the things that happened in the South was from the pulpit, not from synagogue necessarily, but certainly from the Christian pulpit, quoting the Bible, saying this proves that.
Hold on, my friend. Gracias. Thank you. You did beautiful. Yeah, I'm sorry, Steve.
Proves that they would say that these statements, the Torah proves that slavery is justified by God. I mean, This was the argument that was being made in the South.
That's what I'm saying.
Some places in the North too.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, it is a problem.
That's what I'm saying. Like this was used to justify slavery, and there were rabbinic statements that were very against it. And one of the main points against slavery was the Talmud talks about rabbis who freed their slaves to make a minyan. And so that shows that they were freeing their slaves, and it seems to be against Jewish law to free a slave. There's a verse that says that you're not allowed to free your Canaanite slaves, a specific commandment. Then we're going to get to that. We'll get to that. Yeah.
It's all, I mean, it doesn't seem much different or worse or better than using the young girls,
Selling them as slavery.
yeah, and marrying.
That one I can understand more because the reason why they would sell their daughters as slavery was because they wanted to survive them. Yeah. But you're right. There's a lot of parts of the Torah that seem to be difficult. Not a lot, but there's some rare instances in the Torah where it's very challenging for us to understand. Did you ever think about that, David, the slavery in the Torah?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on it?
So my first thought is a direct response to what you said, where it will bother you for the rest of your life, that's in the Torah. And that's a very important thing to do. But a more important thing to do, from my perspective, is to think about how is it possible that in 2023, we still have human slavery in our world in so many parts. And we should think about these questions, but always the bigger question is ending slavery today. everywhere that we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you, David. David's got a lot to share, and tomorrow you can come to University of Maryland at 4:30.
There's a song on it that was written by Bob Dylan, and he actually borrowed it from, he
Viva's an
covered it
expert.
from Ethel Waters, I think, and he felt you gotta serve somebody.
You gotta serve
And
somebody.
and it's very rarely played these days because it's so politically correct. I mean, exactly raises all these issues. And he says, whether you're a king, he said, the song, whether you're a king or a queen, or whether you're a duke or an earl or whatever, you still gotta serve somebody.
Everyone serves.
So the Gemara says, what does the Gemara say? The Gemara says, when you acquire a slave, you acquire yourself a boss.
Kon Evet, Kon Rabo, the Gemara says. But that is a reference to, it's a very good point. No, it's a very good point, but that's a reference to a Hebrew slave, not a
Right.
Canaanite slave, because a Hebrew slave, you give him what you eat, he eats what you eat, he sleeps on what you sleep. But anyway, and you have to pay for his kids' tuition. Like, who would ever get a slave today? You have to pay for their tuition to day school. No, seriously, I'm not kidding. You have to pay for their Jewish education exactly like you get. Yes, Jerry, what's your question with the yellow hand?
Yeah, what would you mind summarizing what the fellow in your
David said the following. David said, yes, it's a tremendous problem that he's going to struggle with his whole life. Why does the Torah allow slavery? But he says that what is a bigger question for him is, why is humanity still allowing slavery today? That there's a lot of human slavery to this day, even in America. And we used to have a man who used to come and pray with us, and he was the ambassador to stop human trafficking, which is another way of saying slavery. Okay, so very nice point. So we go on. And the verse states, "Vim shein abdo shein amaso, Yapiel will knock out his slave's tooth. You send him free." Okay, next verse. And we move from slavery to the goring ox. Of course, the goring ox takes up a huge part of Baba Kama. God willing, we'll get to that. The ox that gores, and today it's not just an ox, it's a car, it's anything.
That's what the lawyers like to say.
Yeah.
The question is, who's offering the boy?
As well.
Yeah, it's not even a joke. If an ox will gore a man or a woman, and the ox will die, you have to stone the ox. You can't eat its flesh. The owner of the ox will go free. Okay, so what does that mean?
The ox is full.
Well, yeah.
It is.
Jerry, are you trying to say something?
I'm sorry.
No. I thought you were trying to speak. So let's see what they say. Well, there's two reasons why you could kill the ox. One is you think it's the ox's fault, or two, you think the ox is dangerous. There's nothing to do with fault. So let's see what the Rashi says.
There's warning involved, yeah.
Well, let's see what Rashi says. When you gore the ox, first thing Rashi says is it's not just an ox, it's any animal. The Torah speaks in the present tense. The Torah gives us a real world example. And then you have to stone the ox, and you can't eat its flesh. Why not? From the fact that it says you're stoning it, well, of course you can't eat it. It's not slaughtered properly. I'll know that it's not kosher. You're not allowed to eat a carcass. Why does the Torah say you cannot eat its flesh? That even if you slaughtered it after it had been sentenced to be killed, that even if one slaughtered it after it had been sentenced to be killed, it's forbidden to be eaten. Meaning to say, even if somehow it was slaughtered, you still can't eat it. And how do we know that it's forbidden to have any other benefit, that you can't take the carcass and use the carcass? The verse states, the owner of the ox is innocent. It doesn't mean he's innocent, it means you get nothing. He's been cleaned out. That's what it means. Not that he's innocent, it means he's been cleaned out of his possessions. He has no benefit from them. That's the midrash. Yes, sir.
Is there a version of this goring of the ox in which the injured party gets to eat the ox of the other person who's whose ox is wrong?
Well, first of all, the person here is dead, but in general, right, so the question is, well, nobody can ever eat the ox, but the question is, who gets the carcass? And that's a dispute in the Talmud.
Can the dogs eat the ox?
No.
No, you can't have benefit from
Can't you
it.
give it to your dogs? Don't the dogs deserve it
No, you
from
can't
what
make
they?
dog food.
No, from here, we're saying, no, it's prohibited to have any benefit from it. So therefore, I mean, the question is, are you required to burn it to make sure that no wild dog gets it? But you're not allowed to give it to your dog. Other animals that are not slaughtered, you can give to your dog, but in this case, you can't give it to your dog.
Absolutely. Because then you get benefit. I mean, you get a benefit when you give it to your dog.
Yeah, your dog
Feel
food.
good about
Dog
feeding
food's
your dog steak.
also your dog likes you more than. Yeah, your dog is like, you're always trying to, the owner will always try to find a way to commiserate with their dog, but no, sorry.
Well, no, I thought we had said that the dogs always get the carcass. That's their that's
do.
their reward. But in this case, they can't because it's hana to the owner.
Yeah, and this ox is forbidden to have any benefit. Upshuto
Not
kamashma.
only that, if this animal had been born, then the owner gets killed along with the dog. That's how bad.
No. The owner is not killed.
If he was born.
No, the owner never gets killed.
Right.
The owner never gets killed.
He's not.
You know, the Torah says he does, but the rabbis say he doesn't get death. The oral law says he doesn't. Or he never gets put to death, but rather he has to pay the value. When it says Ba'alav Yumat, we'll skip a little bit. It says V'gam Ba'alav Yumat, when the owner is put to death. Rashi tells us, Rashi says Bidei Shemayim, through heaven.
Yeah.
Not through,
Bidei Shema.
we don't put him to death.
It's not a joke. My hands are heavy.
Rabbi?
Yes.
Maybe part of the reason why nobody can benefit from this ox is it's the whole, no one in the community can benefit. It makes it more of a serious matter. So no one should be tempted to have a gored ox thinking that somebody could possibly.
Yeah, it's a strong disincentive to allowing your ox to gore someone. An ox, you know how much an ox costs today? Probably it's comparable value as what it was back then. We're talking over $2,000 for an ox. It's a lot of money. And today, $2,000, whatever. But back then, this was a big. He's leaving. That's what it is.
I think of it less like losing an ox and more like business. Like that's like.
Yeah, you're losing a big deal.
I do have one thing in general about this section of Ayin Takas Ayin. The Torah repeats it on multiple occasions. Okay?
Yes.
These exact words.
Yeah.
It seems interesting that it hasn't just sort of said what it needs to say here, because the repeating, I don't know that they're outlining anything different in the different places that it comes up in the Chumash. And I've never thought.
So Rashi talks about this. We saw it in yesterday's Rashi. He talks about how do you go through each one of these cases, or maybe 2 days ago, that he says some of them are repeated more than once. And he says he says, when I'm able to explain why, I will. So sometimes he explains why it's repeated more than once, and other times he doesn't. It's a very robust discussion today. A big shkoyach to everybody. Everybody's offering a lot of very, very interesting comments. We like it. Shkoyach Yameir is correct. That is death, but it's death from heaven. Very nice. I like Cal's points. That's everybody's doing stark. Anyway, so now it states the simple explanation is Lafisha Nemra B'muad, because it says with regard to a muad ox that kills V'gam Ba'alav Yumas, the owner will die. The simplest explanation is that since the next verse, which is talking about an ox that's a muad, what's a muad ox? An ox that's already gored before. And so therefore the owner has the foreseeability, the expectation that it's dangerous and he's supposed to protect it. There it says the owner will die. So in that case, it has to say in this case that the owner, since it was a tam, it had never gored before, it has to say in this case that the owner is innocent. But really, Rashi says it means he's cleaned out, is what he lost a lot of money. Okay, so now we say the next verse, but if the ox will have gored yesterday and the day before, we'll see how many times. Rashi's going to tell us what this means. And so the owner was warned. Zulo Yishmaranu, and he doesn't watch it. The Hamis Isha Isha, and then the ox kills a man. Ashor Yisakel, the Gambal of Yimas. The ox is stoned and the owner is put to death. But as we just said, he's not really put to death. He is put to death from heaven, which,
Well, Uncle says it.
well, let's see what Uncle says. It says,
Put to death.
Raf Marei Yiskatel, right. So Mitmol Shalshon from yesterday and the day before, Arei Shalosh Negichot, if the ox is gored 3 times, he's put to this as this penalty. It's now called a Shor Muad. A man, a human being, is Adam Muad La'olam. A person is always assumed to be dangerous.
Why is 3 better than 2?
Well, the Gemara discusses it, but let's see what Jerry says. The Gemara discusses that, by the way. The Gemara derives it. Big discussion about Bava Kama. Yes, Jerry.
What about the idea of negligence? The owner, even if the ox gores the first time, there's a question of negligence. Does the Torah or the Talmud discuss negligence?
Yes, the Torah and the Talmud does discuss it at length. And for example, the Talmud says that there are certain animals who are always considered to be dangerous even the first time. And also there are certain activities where you're always going to be liable even from the first time. So the Talmud does discuss this. And we're just touching this. We're getting the 20,000 foot view. I mean, we're going to spend an entire year on this topic of how you determine negligence and warning. And when we do Baba Kama, don't worry, it's going to take us at least 5 months. So we'll be able to address your question in depth. Okay.
So was there any fencing available at the time?
Well, the Talmud talks about whether or not a fence is required, if it was on your property, if it was in the public domain. Talmud goes into all those questions for sure.
It says put a fence around the door or something.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. I'm going to give you a Pirkei Avot from the yeshiva. You could show it to Joey.
I've already got 2.
Oh, you already got 2. Okay, fine. All right, we have time.
I love the size. It's like the cell phone size is perfect.
Pocket size, yeah. It says, "V'hu b'va'av," and then he was warned. Lashon hasra ba'edim. He was warned with witnesses. Ha'ed banu ha'ish. Ve'mis ish, and he kills a man. L'fishin emar ki yigach. I only know if he gores him. Let's say he misu b'neshicha, dechifa, ravitza, v'ita minayin. I don't know if the ox kills by biting, pushing, crushing, or kicking. Says the verse, it kills. Okay, and then also the owner is put to death. Rashi says, bidei shemayim, also through heaven. Yachol bidei adam. I might think that he's put to death by a man. Says the verse, Mos yumas amakerotzeach. The one who struck him shall surely die is a murderer. You put him to death for his murder, but you don't kill him for the ox, the act of murder by his ox. But now we have this next verse, very important. The Talmud discusses this verse at great depth. Probably Desmond remembers it. It says, "In kofer yeshu salav," if the ransom shall be imposed upon him. What's the ransom? Meaning to say, the word "im" does not mean if, but it means you will. When you will. Kofer yishat alav, and asam pijonav shall, he has to redeem him. So then this is the concept of kofer. Kofer is that you have to pay a ransom. So you have to take the value, and the Talmud disputes. You take the value of the owner of the ox or the value of the person who was gored. Is kofer, is this ransom a fine or a atonement? Very big dispute. Let's see what Rashi says. You will lend. Hashon asher. Zem mishpato yashita lav beitin kofer, that the court shall assess a ransom. Minatam pidyon now show, he shall give his soul. So if your ox gores somebody and kills him after your ox was a muad, then you have to pay the ransom of his soul. Of whose soul? So Rashi says, Demei Nizak. The first opinion, Divrei Rabbi Shmuel, says you have to pay the value of the person who was gored. Whereas the second opinion is Rabbi Akiva, he says Demei Mazik, the value of the person that did the damage. Gesundheit, Steve. All right, let us pray, my friends. Let us pray at this time.
Too much oxygen.
Yeah.